Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Quick video here, well, hopefully quick. We're upgrading the display for the Racecapture in the car. So right now we're on the Samsung tablet 7-inch, and there's some problems with it that I've been meaning to address. The first one here is, I don't know if you can see that, but there's a lot of lag. It's really slow. You know, I wouldn't care so much in regards to like input, but the data that's coming up on the screen is slow as well. Right now I've got no data feeding into it from the car, but if I did, it'd be even slower. Um, so I think that's just kind of, it's an old tablet and it can't keep up. Other problem is the display is not that bright, so it looks pretty bright here, but in the car, depending on the angle of the sun and where you are on the track, sometimes it washes out the display and you can't see it. The third one is that on hot days, this can get hot, and when it gets hot, it thermal throttles, so it slows down the processor, and what was already laggy and slow to begin with gets even slower. Sometimes it even gets so hot that it just turns off. So it's been a really cheap solution for the 4 or 5 years I've had it, but it's time for something new. So what I found online was this display. It's powered off a Raspberry Pi 4. Let's see if I can get this to come off here. And this is a 5-inch display, touchscreen, single point, which is good enough. The nice part about this display is that it's plugs directly into the GPIO ports for the Raspberry Pi, so it gets power from the Raspberry Pi, and it was custom spec'd for MakerPlane to produce 1100 nits. So 1100 nits is like the brightness of the screen, and 1100 is about 2 to 2.5 times brighter than your typical tablet or phone. So it's super bright, and in fact, you'd be hard pressed to find a screen that you can plug into a Raspberry Pi that's this bright. So that's sort of the party piece of this screen. This screen is designed for a Raspberry Pi 3 or a Raspberry Pi 4. What I have here is a Raspberry Pi 4. Had this one laying around the house. I've got some heat sinks. Here's a back heat sink here, and or I guess a back plate heat sink and a front plate heat sink. I don't know if I can use this because of the case that everything's getting packaged into. But this heatsink was bought on Amazon for like 12 bucks or 15 bucks, something like that. It's been modified slightly, so I've ground off a bunch of the fins to clear the connectors on the display, and then I've taken the overall profile of the heatsink down so that it can clear the chips on the back of the display. Fortunately, originally the plan was to run a fan, so you can see here the heatsink can take 2 fans. Problem is with all the clearancing, you can see here the fan is much taller than the heatsink now. So the fan's just not going to work. Hopefully the Raspberry Pi runs cool enough that I don't need the fans. Other modification I've done here is, although the Raspberry Pi can't have a fan directly mounted onto the heatsink, the case for this whole like enclosure or this whole setup has provisions for mounting 1 fan. I think I might be able to add more holes to put more fans on there, but in any case, we need to power those fans, and it would be easy if we could take power off of the Type-C power plug for the Raspberry Pi. So what I've done here is soldered onto 2 of the kind of pinouts on the back of the Type-C plug, and it'll draw 5 volts directly from that connector. And then I've got this kind of fan breakout right here. Typically you would actually have a cable that comes off this end of the board and plugs into like a motherboard or something to get power. In this case, what we'll be doing is plugging this in to that power connector. And now this entire breakout board is powered, and I can just plug however many fans I want into it. And then the goal is to sneak this somewhere inside the case or the housing. So I might be able to mount it, say, right there on the back of the display, or off to the side somewhere on the casing. Okay, so let me go ahead and put this back together here, and then we can fire it up. Oh, one last modification here. We had to drill out one of the mounting holes on the heatsink, just because one of the standoffs has to pass through it. So let me go ahead and put this together here. Okay. And then this connector to connect the HDMI out to the display. And I'll go ahead and power this up and tell you a little bit more about the Raspberry Pi itself. Okay, so while that turns on, Racecapture actually has a software designed for the Raspberry Pi, or an application designed for the Raspberry Pi. Problem is, I think there was some stuff that changed with the Raspberry Pi 4, and they've got a beta release for the Raspberry Pi 4, but it could use some work. It sometimes doesn't run on certain Raspberry Pi 4s, and it's a little slow. So the interim solution has been to run Android on the Raspberry Pi 4, because Racecapture has an Android application. So if you can get Android on the Raspberry Pi 4, you can just run the Android version of the app. So here we've got Android 11, Lineage OS, was ported over by someone named Consta, or that might be the shorthand of his name. Him and a group of other developers took Lineage OS and ported it over the Raspberry Pi 4, and it's super fast. So we can kind of show you here. There's not much to show you because it's very basic. I didn't really install anything, but you can see it's snappy, it's fast. Touchscreen works out of the box. Well, it works. It's supported out of the box. You just have to copy one file over, and it's fast. So if I launch the Racecapture app here, excuse me, it's snappy, it's quick. There's no dashboard set up here because I haven't done that yet. But if you can see here, like oops, wrong button. When I push the button here, it's fast, much faster than the tablet. And more importantly, it's bright. So I'm excited to use this and to set it all up and get it going. I am currently waiting for an enclosure to arrive from one of my buddies. He has a 3D printed one for me, and then I'll put everything together and then get it mounted in the car. But just wanted to make a quick little video and show you guys that. And hopefully some of you guys out there with an Autosport Labs Racecapture kind of setup will find something like this interesting. I'm not gonna lie, this stuff worked really well for a long time, and I'm hoping that this will be kind of the next stage moving forward for the car, and really excited to play around with this. If you guys have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. And hopefully we'll have a quick update video here in the next couple of days when the enclosure arrives. All right, we'll see you in the next one. Take care.